Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's live session with Mr. Adam Smith from Niche Website Builders. The link is below if you want to see what Niche Website Builders have to offer. They can do a full service for you if you're lazy like me and don't want to do any work, or you can order certain bits of the services that you might need. So do check them out. But that's not why we're here today. We're not here to sell Niche Website Builders. We're here to steal from Niche Website Builders. And when I say steal, Adam has had a data scientist look at 5,000 websites, and we're going to dig deep into that data and find out all of the things that everyone asks. Things like, Adam, what kind of things can we ask you here today? Because we obviously want that live chat. But can we ask like how much content's on these websites? How long was that content? What sort of, like, obviously from your perspective, what sort of stuff were you asking the data scientist to dig into? Because obviously you've got all this data, but what are you telling that guy? What is it you want from that?
Yeah, so I guess the main question we wanted answered from this whole project and a little bit about the kind of background is, it's the age-old question when everybody's starting out in the space. They want to know, how much content do I need? I guess, were we live?
Yeah, we're live.
No, were we live when we were talking about who's the richest guy in the room?
Yeah.
I didn't realize Ryan Kadura is there.
also Ryan's sitting. In fact, that's a lie. We weren't live. Ryan's sitting in the room behind me. So Ryan's actually the same. He's up in Glasgow. Right, just now. So
I was thinking that. How's that?
You're early-waking bastard, Ryan.
Come and give us a wave, Ryan.
Ryan, you have to come and give us a wave. You have to come here a minute. Adam wants to see you.
Hey, Randy, nice to see you in the chat, man.
Mr. Rodet is
anyway,
always here.
While we wait for Ryan to pop his head around, there he is. Hey, bud.
How you doing?
Yeah,
I'm excited to see the data. I'm excited to see the data.
Good. Yeah, it's good. You'll enjoy it now.
Good. I'm gonna go and watch it in the other room.
Yeah. So the whole premise of this project, the whole reason we started this whole data project to start with was to answer the age-old question of, when people start out, they want to know how much content and how many links they need to build, or what kind of link building they need to do in order to get to certain amounts of revenue. So they'll say, I want to build a website to $1,000 a month. How much content do I need, and what kind of link building do I need? And in all honesty, like, lots of the answers to that question usually just involve, well, you definitely need content and you definitely need links. I don't really know how much you need, but just keep going until you get there. Eventually you'll get there, which is kind of what we used to say. And it's what most people in the space say. But we thought, well, what if we go out and we look at this is version 1 of our data project, and it covers just shy of 5,000 sites. But what if we look at 5,000 sites that are just content and affiliate websites? So they're not e-commerce stores, they're not brick and mortar stores or anything like that. They literally just either monetize with display ads, or they're monetized with like Amazon Associates or an affiliate program. How much traffic do they get? What's their average DR rating? And from there, can we estimate how much revenue they're making if we make a generalization on what their RPM is, for example? And that's what we did. We went out, we spent about 3 months collecting a big list of these types of sites. It took us a long time to filter through them, to categorize them. We haven't finished the categorization, which I'll show you when I show you the data fully yet. But we started to get an answer now of, if you want to get to $1,000 a month, or $10,000 a month, or $20,000 a month, on average across these 5,000 sites, this is the amount of content they have. This is the domain rating they have. And we're working to make it better. Like I say, this is version 1. And eventually we want to add in how long the site's been live. Have they got social media channels and all that kind of stuff? But for now, it kind of starts to answer that fundamental question.
Interesting. Interesting. Obviously, when you're looking at these kind of things, it's obviously hard to decipher that data and look at 5,000 websites. But I would just be curious to know, what type of websites were you looking at? Was it all niche websites, or was it like just e-com, a bit of this and a bit of that? How did you select those websites?
Yeah, so we started off with a much bigger list because we just scraped tons and tons of websites. And then it was this is why this is the bit that took us probably the longest, is going through each one of those manually, looking at them. And if it wasn't an affiliate website, or if it wasn't a display ad website, then it just got removed from the list. So there's no brick and mortar websites in there. There's no e-commerce websites in there. There's no SaaS businesses in it. It's just all display ads or affiliate type websites.
And so, as I say, I'm just curious to dig into this from a personal perspective. Yeah. Now, I'm just going to hit out with some questions, if that's cool with you. Obviously, something you don't want to share, fair play. Also, guys in the comments, feel free to pick his brain here. But the one that I most commonly get asked on every single bloody show is, how many articles? And I know it's the stupidest question in the world. The more articles, the more money comes in. But on average, what is the across those 5,000 websites, the kind of average article count?
Right. Should I show you? Should we bring it up and have a look?
Yes. Let's go for it.
Let me zoom in, because can you see this? Is it zoomed in enough, or do you want me to zoom in a bit more, Craig?
A little bit more, I think, if you can.
Was that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool. So I've hidden the URLs in column A because we don't want to share that. It's kind of, we spent 3 months collecting them. But essentially what this sheet shows is we've got URL, and then we've got what niche it belongs to, the number of pages it has. And this is, I've seen some tools out there which talk about number of index pages. They're horribly inaccurate. This is number of pages according to Ahrefs, which is not 100% accurate, but it's much more accurate than just looking at like the site operator. So this is an indication of how many pieces of content they have, the domain rating, and then how much traffic they have. And again, this traffic level comes from Ahrefs. So, it's not super accurate, but typically underestimates what the real traffic is. Usually on average, sites got 100,000 in Ahrefs, and it's probably got more than 100,000 visitors in actual Google Analytics. And then from there, what we did was we banded them together into groupings. So these are the groupings right here. You can see we've got sites that get between 10,000 and 25,000 monthly visitors, 25 and 50, 50 and 100, and so on. And from there, then, this main table up at the top here is all of the sites in the database combined. So we can see that the sites that are banded between 10 and 25,000 visitors per month, on average, they've got an average domain rating of 29, and on average have 289 pieces of content, and they get on average 12,000 visitors per month. And then if you would estimate that they make an average of $25 RPM or EPMV, which we can explain, we can go into a little bit in a bit about how that is potentially low. Sites in that banding on average are making $308 per month, essentially. And then we've got the bandings for the rest. So if somebody says, I want to make a site that makes $1,000 a month, on average, according to our data, you need a site which is around a DR35 and about 380 pieces of content. Now, that's not to say, this is just the average. There's definitely sites in this data which are anomalies both sides. There's sites which are getting 30,000 visits per month with way less content, and there's sites that are getting 30,000 with way more content. But this is just kind of like to show what the average you should be aiming for, essentially. And then this other bit here, because I'm assuming you have more questions on that in a second, Craig, is this is where we're trying to break it down by niche then. So not all of them have niches attached yet. We're still working on going through and adding the niches in. But you can pick here and you can say this is the average data for all of them. And then this table then is the data for everything that's in the food space. And we've categorized 615 sites. So in this case, you can see if you want to make a site that gets to a couple of $100 a month, 650, you need less pieces of content than general. So if you're making a small site, the food space is actually probably a good space to be in because you need a lower DR and lower number of pieces of content to make less than $1,000 a month. But if you want to push it a bit further and get up to $1,000 a month compared to the one above, you need more content and you need a stronger domain. So this is, I think, once this is fully fleshed out, where the magic will be, because you can then start saying, well, I want to build a site to X amount of revenue. All right, which is the best niche for me to go into in that space? Because you can see, well, that's food. What about if we look at travel? We've only got 330 sites in there, but you can start to tailor then, like, well, which niche is best for which size of site that you want to go into.
Interesting. Now, based on this, I just want to quickly talk about the all sites combined tab, right? So for my own Craig Campbell SEO website, my domain is about 58.
Right.
I have around 400 pages on that website. On here, you're saying the average number is 1,700. Average traffic is 680. Mine's is a lot less. And revenue through my own website is far less than that. So basically taking in my DR and all that kind of stuff, this is basically telling me that I'm a lazy bastard and there's a lot more money on the table, is essentially what it's telling me. Would that be an accurate thing to say, though? Like, I've got a DR58. I could, and I know I should. I mean, a lot of my traffic comes through social media and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. I don't have a main, thing going on with my blog as such. But it shows that there is a lot of room for improvement on that. Because, my figures, even though the DR is up there, everything else is far less. So,
for sure. It definitely shows that. It shows it a couple of different things, because what it shows is you've got the domain rating to be essentially in these top two brackets right here. But what you're missing is content. And that's one of the ways that you can use this data to say, well, I know if you wanted to invest in your site going forward now and you wanted to build that traffic, essentially you're already at the level where you've got the domain rating that's required essentially on average for that kind of level of traffic. What you're missing, if you say you've got 400 pieces of content, you're missing content, and you're missing content to the tune of 800 plus pieces of content. If you want to get up into that realm, it doesn't mean you have to publish that, but if you want to start reaching those kinds of traffic levels from an organic perspective, on average, that's what you need. So this kind of starts to build you out a roadmap, rather than you just saying, well, I want more traffic, I've got a DR58, I'll just keep building links and maybe I'll add a little bit of content. You've got something definitive now to hang your hat on and say, well, actually, what's next? I want to get to 200,000. All right, well, my aiming point should be 800 pieces of content. If I've got 400, what's the research? How do I get the titles for the next 400? How can I start plowing that content on the site? And it's good then for also, as you go up the rungs there, you can measure your progress, because you're not going to just jump from 400 to 1,200. You're going to do it gradually, I'm assuming, over time, but you can start to measure your progress. Am I above average? Am I below average? If I'm below average, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing anything wrong? Or is it just the time thing? Do I just need more time?
Yeah. I know mine's is just pure laziness on my part. But hey, but someone's asking a question, Backy, and Backy, I know you've sent me a few emails. I will reply to you. But when you're looking at these websites, I'm going to make the assumption that, there's going to be a mixture of, some are pumped full of AI content, some are done by copywriting. But he's asking, can we just pump it with AI content? And I know there's been a lot of chat over the last couple of weeks on AI content with some of the newer stuff, OpenAI and stuff. So what's your thoughts? Are these websites pumped full of content, or was there any kind of research done into that?
Yeah, so the answer is no. We didn't actually differentiate the data between AI and non-AI content. One, because it's actually really difficult to tell. There's tools out there, but they're notoriously bad. I think there's a couple of entrants in the market now which will say they'll tell you if it's AI or human-written content, but I think they're a bit hit and miss, if I'm being completely honest. I've not seen one which is super accurate yet. So we didn't run anything through here, but the fact, I think, that the one thing that's missing out here, which we will be adding in, is how long these websites have been around for. And in this list of 5,000, there's definitely lots of newer sites, but there's a ton of more established sites that have been around a long time before AI got to the point where you could potentially pump out, I guess, readable content from it. So my guess would be that of these 5,000 sites, the majority, like 95% plus at least, would be human written content and not AI pump and generate. We did remove sites from the data set that had sometimes 20, 30,000 pieces of content, which clearly it was just AI, or it was a news website, like a news section, and they published 50 pieces of news content a day. Like, we removed those because they're not the kind of sites that we would create anyway, you know?
Yeah. No, it makes sense to move that. It's just going to skew the data, right? So
exactly. But I guess in terms of content, can you just go out and pump out content? Can you just go make 1,200 AI pieces of content? I mean, you could. You see it working, depending on, or you can see it working. But then you also see these types of sites get hit with in updates. Like, I think a ton of them got smashed in the last update, and now OpenAI is talking about digitally watermarking their content output, so it leaves a footprint. I don't know. It makes you wonder what's coming in the future from Google, right?
Yeah, it's yeah, I just don't trust that at all. I think you can't beat human written content at the moment. So I would personally try and push someone towards that. But also another quick question, then we'll go back to the data. LNE marketing, out of these websites, did you look at the display versus affiliate link kind of stuff going on, or was that not something you dug into?
So we made sure that they were either monetized with display ads or affiliate links. So it's one or the other. It's not differentiated in the data, but in terms of how we've estimated the revenue, aka the $25 EPMV, that actually came from our own portfolio websites. So we looked at our own portfolio websites. We looked at what the average earnings, or RPM, EPMV, whatever you want to call it, was from display ads. And it was just shy of $25. So we use that as a kind of base level. But for the sites that are monetized with maybe affiliate and display ad revenue, the RPM is going to be higher than 25. So it's actually probably a little bit pessimistic for some of these sites if they're using decent affiliate programs, or if they're using display ads on a page and even Amazon affiliates on there or something. Typically their RPM is going to be higher. So it's the revenue estimate is probably on the pessimistic side. But that's how we came up with
it. So at the bottom of your spreadsheet there, it's got pick niche below, number of sites in the database. Are you able to give us, the audience, some ideas on some niches that are working better than others? You mentioned earlier the kind of travel and stuff like that. But again, common question I'm asked is, what's a good niche? Now, obviously, I can't go out and do research for everyone. You can literally make a niche out of a lot of things, but curious to know, when you're looking at 5,000 websites, if there was a particular trend where you could turn around and say, this is the most popular, or getting the kind of most traffic.
Yes and no. I think it's, well, first of all, we haven't put a niche to every single one of them yet, so that data is not complete. But what this does allow us to do, and this is, I think, this is what's going to be proprietary. We'll talk about how we use this for keyword research for niche website builders in a second. But essentially, what it allows us to do is cherry pick, even within any niche. So most niches are saturated these days. Like, very rare you'll find a niche or a sub niche that's not saturated. But the key for us is, even in those big niches, what are the subtopics, or even like what are examples of websites that are doing well, from either they've got low number of pages, or they've got low DR, or they've got a combination of both, but they're still crushing in terms of traffic. Like, either they've picked a really good sub niche of the topic, or they're doing something really good, and we want to look at what they're doing to basically, imitate them. So, for example, here I've just looked at the food space, and I've ordered it number of pages lowest to highest, and we've got DR in here as well. And this site's here with 84 pieces of content, a DR 17, doing a decent amount of traffic. But then even a little bit further down, we've got this site here. It's got 109 pieces of content. It's a DR 25, 250,000 Ahrefs visitors per month, 135 a DR 30. So we can use this data in nice, innovative ways. If you come to us and say, hey, I've got an age domain, it's a DR20, I want to get into the food space, what's working? We can say, obviously, I'm not showing the URL here, but we can say, okay, well, you've got a DR20, so these two and this one, and this one, and this one. These are all domains, websites with weaker domains than you. And they're all getting a decent amount of traffic. But look at this one, 180,000. We've got 147 pieces of content. We'll open up that URL and say, what are they doing? They're in food space, but are they in a specific sub-niche of food? What type of content are they creating? Are they creating question and answers about how you can, it could be, can you warm up certain types of food in the microwave, for example? It could be food substitutes, or it could be recipes, but certain types of recipes. And then we can look at that and say, well, actually, that's doing really well. In the data set, are there any more sites that look at those kinds of topics? And if there are, what do their profile look like? And before you know it, you found a winner of saying, well, in the food space, we know that looking at across our sites of 615 sites in the food space, there's 15 in there which cover a certain subtopic. The average number of pages is lower than what it is across all the sites combined. And then the average DR is lower. Therefore, we know it's a good opportunity. And that's what we will base our plan and our research around then for building out that site going forward. And you can look at that across any niche. So, I think travel was another one in there, which had a decent amount of sites in there. So if we look at sites, smallest, lowest, travel looks like a decent opportunity again. There's sites in here. This is a DR5, so a really low DR, DR11, a DR3, and a 4. Couple of hundred pieces of content generating, upwards of 30, 40, 50,000 visits per month. So we can, that's the way we can use this data set. And we've got the URL and we can go and look. And one of the future plans for this data set is to go back and update it to include other things in there, like, do these websites have YouTube channels? Do they have social media profiles? Do they have well thought out and structured about us pages? Do they have schema markup on there? And then it just takes a little bit further. You can say, well, these are the sites that we would like to target. Which of these tick boxes do they have? Can we see that you need a social media profile and you need a YouTube channel if all of these lower authority sites that are doing well, do they have that in common, for example? Is that one thing, one of the signals that's making them stand out, essentially?
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you guys know what people are asking for when it comes to niche websites. What kind of things were you looking for to be able to tell people? Because you get asked more questions than I do when it comes to affiliate websites, and you know the most commonly asked questions out there. What's the DR? What's the kind of average page count and stuff like that? But what other kind of interesting stuff have you been able to pull from this?
Yeah, well, there's two aspects for it. One is people who want to start a new website. Like the biggest question they want to know is how much content, how much links to get to X revenue. Like, that's the main question pretty much anyone who's starting out wants to know. And now we can kind of answer that. The other thing they want to know is, like, say, which niches work best, or they come to us and say, hey, I want to go into the travel space. I've got X amount of budget. What's realistic? And then again, from this data, we can look and say, well, with your budget, with X amount of link building and X amount of content, realistically, you could fall into kind of this range, essentially, of what's achievable over time before you have to put new money in. The other way you can use this kind of data set is to look at existing websites that are for sale and see if they are above or below average in terms of their performance. So if you were to, let me clear all this off. If you were looking to buy a website, for example, and it was getting 100,000 visits a month or 90,000 visits a month, and then you looked at the DR and the number of pages they had, you could say, well, all right, I'm getting 100,000 visits per month. I've got 600 pieces of content, but my DR is only a 35. And you say, well, actually, the site is doing pretty well. That's an opportunity for me there. So it's underperforming the average, which means they're doing something right elsewhere. And the opportunity for me now is, if I increase the domain ranking, that should have a positive impact on the rest of the site, even without adding new content. Or it could be like in your situation where you say, I've got a massive DR, I've got awesome links to the site, I don't really have enough content. There's the opportunity. So if you're going to sell your website, you could use this data and say, well, that's the opportunity for Craig's website, is push out content and create the planner on there. So it's all about using the data to create a roadmap, essentially, for you should be doing either content and links, or you should be doing just links, or you should be doing just content, and trying to figure out that balance between how much of each you should be doing based on where you fall in the average range.
I'm getting tweets just popping in my phone as well. Someone else is watching there and asking again, just to clarify where the data came from. So I know you said that there was all sites combined, and then you drilled into it and looked at niche websites and kind of eliminated mass news websites or mass websites that have clearly been pumped full of AI content. But again, was there a specific country? So he's asking. So I'm just curious if you can dig a little bit deeper into it so that people can say this is good data. Sure.
So the data came from two sources, I guess. One was us picking a topic like food, and then going to Ahrefs, looking at what the top seed keywords were, and just manually pulling out sites that just covered the topic of food. That was taking a long time. And then we found a way to scrape display ad network websites based on their JSON file. So if they were monetized with Ezoic, or if they were monetized with AdThrive or Mediavine, they would have a specific JSON file, and we're able to scrape them for that. That gave us a massive list. That list was about 40,000 websites. But from there, we eliminated the ones which didn't fall into our smallest bracket, so the 10 to 25,000 visitors per month range. That got rid of a ton, because even though they've got the JSON file, and it doesn't mean that they're actually getting traffic. I got rid of a ton. I think that got us down to around 20,000. And then from there, me, Eleanor, who's been on your stream as well, and a couple of our other team, spent a lot of time then just literally copying and pasting the URL into the browser, looking at it, saying, is this an affiliate site or a content site? Yes or no. If it is, it stays in the list. If it doesn't, we'll remove it. And also, while we're there, what is the niche? But as you can probably tell, the niche was an afterthought, because we did a ton of them and then went, oh, let's do the niche. And we haven't gone back through. That's why we've only got some of the niche there. But again, that niche is a lot more reliable, because you can pull the niche from like Majestics, like codes, essentially. You can say, well, run it through Majestic, and it gives you a niche code back. It's not super reliable, I don't think. So actually going in, looking at the site, saying, well, this is about travel. They cover best destinations to travel, best times of the year. So obviously a travel site, and we'll manually code it that way.
Interesting, and hopefully that answers your question over there on Twitter. But when it comes to banding, obviously you've got these figures here, and obviously people are always going to look at the 500k to 1 million, the DR 58 and stuff like that. Now, throughout the data, does it, I'm not sure whether people would look at this from a amount of pages or the average traffic value, but is there any data there that you've got on average for someone to get 1,700 pages on a website, it taking like 3 years? Because obviously, again, I've got 400 articles. I've had my website for, that particular website since 2016. So that what, fucking 7 years. So I've got to.
We did establish that you've been lazy, Craig. Come on now.
Yeah. No, but like 1,700, you're just like,
no.
How long are you supposed to spread that over? Does the data suggest anything like that?
Well, I can answer the question two ways. One is, it doesn't at the moment, because we are adding in how old these sites are. It's really hard to find a reliable metric for that, though, because you can look at who is data to see when the site was registered. But if it's been dropped, for example, then it doesn't look right. If it was dropped and reused again as a domain, so we're looking at different ways on how we can add in how long these websites have been about. But the number of pages of content, it's a funny one. It's all about kind of effort, essentially. And just to give you an idea, on our new Beast website case study that we're doing, our internal project that we've been talking about. We launched it in September, so October, November, December, 3.5 months ago, and we're already at 1,200 pieces of content, and we're aiming to be live on the site early next year, 2,200 pieces of content. And it was a DR27 when we bought it. We're doing aged 301 age domain redirecting. We're doing digital PR link building. It's a DR43 now. But again, by early next year, the aim is to get it up to a DR60. And it's based on this data because the whole aim for that project is to get the website to generate $25,000 a month. We can see in here that to get to 20, we need 1,700 pieces of content under DR58. We want to go above that. So we planned out the whole content schedule to be 2,200 pieces of content and a DR60. And so far it's working. We're just added it to Ezoic. It's just started making about $10, $11 a day. But it's only 3 and a bit months old, and it's on a massive upward trajectory.
Yeah. Oh, that's class. I think that's great to hear that, obviously money talks, and you can give it a good old hard push, but it took me 6 years to get 400. Don't be a lazy bandit like me. You can work harder, spend more money, and obviously get to, because everyone's going to look at the bottom of that and go, I want to be in the top bracket. I want 20K a month from my website. So I think that's the important thing, that it is achievable in a, not a 5-year period. Can we get there quick? So
well, I think the good thing about that as well is that it's like the snowball effect, right? That first rung of getting to a couple of $100 or $1,000 a month is always going to be hard because you're putting in a lot of effort there to get to a couple of hundred pieces of content. It is a lot of effort, and it's probably more than most people think, which is, see time and time again, people enter the space, think they can slap up 30 pieces of content and make a ton of money, and then they get disheartened and then they leave the industry, and they don't really realize sometimes how close they were. But once you get to that point of making a couple of $100 or $1,000 a month, if you don't rely on that money to live, you can reinvest that and you can snowball the growth, because that $1,000 a month can then go towards new content. And all right, you need to go from 380 pieces of content to 600. It's another 200 pieces of content, but you've got $1,000 a month you can reinvest now. You can buy content, you can hire writers, you can do whatever you want essentially to help you get to that next rung a lot quicker. And then when you get to the next rung, a couple of $1,000 a month, you reinvest that, and it's much quicker then to get to the next rung. So the goal here should never be just to pick, I want to get to $1,000 a month, that's my end goal. It's always, all right, I'm there now, how can I reinvest this money to get to the next one? Because for most people in this space, the payoff comes when you sell one of these assets, because it's 30 to 40x multiple on the revenue. If you've got a website that you can leverage that's making $1,000 a month and is worth 30 to 40,000 today, if you can leverage that monthly income and you can turn it into a site making $5,000 a month, you've got a site which is worth 150 to 200,000 then, and it'll take a lot less time to get there than it probably would for you to get to that first rung of $1,000 a month.
Yeah. Totally agree. And also your mentality. If you're going to think the end goal is £1,000 a month, you've got a loser mentality. We want to think 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. It's the only way you're ever going to get there. So
exactly.
you need to be positive. But Ryan Durrani, what's your link building strategy to push that DR? Are you going down the PR and Harrow route?
Yeah, let me pull up and show you, because I'll show you exactly what we have done. Stop sharing, present. So you should be able to. Can you see my screen there now or not?
We can now.
Yes. So this is that mega project, Ryan, that I talked about, that we add in 2,000 pieces of content and building the DR from a 27 to a 60 plus. The site was launched in August, not September, sorry. And so far we have redirected in 3 additional age domains. So it was built on an age domain to start with. That's why it was a DR27 to start. And in August, we redirected in a DR33, which had 316 referring domains. 2 in September, a DR27 and a DR20 with a couple of hundred referring domains. And then in October, another DR24 with 525. And we'll continue doing this until we get to our kind of target where we want to be in terms of our link building efforts. But essentially, redirecting in age domains, assuming that you do everything right, because there's definitely a right and a wrong way of redirecting age domains. They have to be incredibly relevant, and they have to pass all the vetting procedures that you would do to build on a money site. They have to be super high quality, and then you have to redirect them into another in a specific way. Which, I mean, we could probably I could do a whole episode on how we do that. Great, but a big part of the strategy is finding these domains, because it's so much easier to buy and redirect in 300 domains than it is to build them. Now, not all of those 316 are going to be top quality, top tier, but a good chunk of them are, especially if it's a good quality site, the DR33. So that's one aspect. And then we are doing digital PR. So Haro and digital PR. So far we built 17 links through digital PR, and this is some of the DR and Ahrefs traffic. So they're top tier. They're like MSN and Yahoo and that kind of stuff. There's DR 90 pluses with 60 million visits per month, and DR 80s with 7 million visits per month. And this not only does this help build a DR, which is the goal of it, it's also really good for building like EAT, essentially. The fact that we're building these sites, and usually the fact that the persona that we make for them is a fake persona. I don't really have any digital footprint right now. You're in a space, you've got a fake persona, you've got a fake about this page. If you start doing Haro or digital PR for that, usually the links that you build will have the person's name as a mention. So it might say Adam Smith, food expert from XX website. And you start to build up a real life digital footprint for that person, even though they're not real. Like if Forbes mentions it or Yahoo mentions it, you start to build this network. And then further down the line, you can use, certain types of schema if you wanted to say, well, the author of this website is Adam Smith, as mentioned on Forbes article, CNN article. And you can say specifically to Google that this person is real now. They've got a footprint, and EAT no longer becomes a problem, essentially, or it's less of a problem down the line, even though the person isn't real.
Interesting. Ravi's got a little question here on how to find the best PR journalist and which tool to use. Is it that easy where you get a tool and you can find the best journalist for any niche, or is there more to it than that? Obviously, I know you guys can help with that with your digital PR packages, but what's the answer to that question?
There's journalist database out there. You've got Cision, you've got Mudrack. We use Mudrack internally as our database, journalist database. They're expensive though if you want to run a digital PR campaign for one website. Like, usually, depend on your site, but usually doesn't make sense for you to buy access to a database if you've only got one site. And it's not as easy as just buying the database or access to the database and then doing a filter and emailing though, because you've still got to tailor your pitch. You've still got to find the right journalists that have covered the same articles in the past. And you can search these databases for journalists that have talked about the topic in a certain amount of time, or they specialize in certain areas. But from what we've seen, and the whole reason we brought Jack and Jake in to run our digital PR service, they've got 8 years experience, is journalists tend to prefer working with people that they've got a relationship with. Honestly, it's incredible. I see Jake shares some of the stuff on Slack, and he's got journalists from the Daily Mail messaging him saying, hey, I'm running a piece tomorrow. Do you have any clients that can talk about X, Y, Z? I'm like, surely it should be the other way around, right? Surely you should be reaching out to them saying, we've got someone. But once you've got that relationship, it's almost, lots of it becomes incoming to you, like inflow for digital PR rather than outflow. So the databases are good as a backup, but it's the relationships you build. And Jake always says, like, whatever you do, never burn a relationship with a journalist. Like, it's so valuable. It's the main thing. If you're going to be successful in digital PR, it's all about the relationships you have there.
Also, I want to tell a little story. I used to use the Cision or whatever it's called. So it cost me just over $1,000 just to push that out to their newswires. Now, after that, it didn't really do much because the story was shit. It was something I had cobbled together myself. I'm not painting a picture of myself here. But I think, I didn't want to pay the PR package rates, if you like,
Yeah.
not with niche website builders, but when I was doing this, we all want
Yeah.
a freebie. It cost me over $1,000 to pitch something that never got picked up. It cost, I could have went to someone and got it angled in properly. But also, if people, like you say, people who do this on a regular basis, it's not about pushing it out to the newswires, easily just going to their contacts. I don't give a shit. I just wanted some good quality, high profile links. And that Sizzy's not always the best option. It really got a crap pickup. So doing that was ludicrous and money down the toilet pan for me. So I think, like you say, those contacts and just going to someone who can whether they do a WhatsApp, whether they pick up the phone, I don't care, as long as I get my links. So
exactly. It's a numbers game. If you're going to just use the database for cold outreach, because you don't have to just send out like a press release and hope it gets picked up. You've actually got individual journalist contact details in there, so you can say, well, give me the contact details for 25 journalists that cover electric vehicles or have covered them for the last 2 months, and then you can tailor your pitch specifically to them because you've got their details there. But again, it's a numbers game. It's like Haro. You could pitch to 100 journalists a day like that, and maybe only one of them would reply to you. Whereas if you've got contacts, you can email them and you've guaranteed a reply. And depending on where the contacts are, especially on some of the big news sites, like if you get something picked up in MSN or Yahoo, all right, you've got an awesome headline link, but also gets syndicated through to a ton of regional sites as well. And those regional sites might be DR50 plus. And that one link, that one contact turns into maybe 7 or 8 links that have been built through those regional syndications then.
And here's a question that's always asked.
Yeah.
Do journalists ask for money to get the PR done?
No. If anyone's asking you for money, they're not a journalist. They're a link builder. Their business model is to sell links on their website. And if someone is asking you for money, then I'd run a mile, essentially. Their interest, a journalist's interest in terms of this, whatever you give them, whether it's an expert quote or a data piece or a visualization piece, their motivation should be to get the best story that they can. And most of them, it's around that. Most of them are panicking because they need stuff really quick because they're on tight deadlines. So they're not always motivated to get the best story out, but they're interested to get the story out as best they can, as quick as they can usually. But if anybody's asking you for money, Ravi, then it's the wrong kind of site probably to be building links on from a digital PR perspective.
I think that's the common misconception that people have, is that journalists are sitting there just waiting for a paycheck, rather than journalists are just desperate for good creative stories. So if you can put in some nice data, something of interest, that is what gets picked up. You
can leverage that as well, like because of that, because they're desperate for good quality content. If you can make a relationship with a journalist or a handful of journalists, you can search on Google to see what stories they did 6 months or 12 months ago, especially if it's like a seasonal thing or something where the data changes every 6 or 12 months. You can rehash that story with fresh and new data. They've published something similar in the past. They'll do it again. If you presented it to them on a plate and say, hey, you did this 6 months ago, data's changed, here's an updated version, they're going to love you for it. Like, that's the way you build your relationship with them. Oh my God, this is amazing. It's almost ready to publish. That's great. My editor's going to love this. Like, check off my box. I can concentrate on something else now.
So is that the key, though? Just laying it on a plate for them so they can literally copy and paste, make it as easy as you possibly can for them? Because they're lazy like all of us. We just want something done quickly and easily. We don't want to be back, forward, back, forward, back, forward. Is that the key?
Well, I think it is in certain markets, it's not in others. So Jake basically said it's the key in the US. They're a little bit lazy. They like the stories handed them to on a plate, and they'll sometimes literally copy and paste them. But a UK journalist will not like that, essentially. If you want UK coverage, they want to add their own spin. They're just interested in the pure, what have you got? It's a quote. Why is this person expert? Or what's the data? How did you collect it? Why is it correct? Why should I use it? They'll make their own assumptions from it. So yeah, it depends. But if it's US, then they love having it on a plate. And if it's US, they love having it on a plate, and they also love if you can make it regional. So you can say, top 10 states, and then you know that this person writes for a regional paper in a certain state and say, hey, your state is number one. Oh my God, they love it. Like they go wild for that kind of stuff. If they can say our state beat another state, or our home football team or American football team beat another team, or whatever that looks like. Even down as we did a piece about best cities for tech startups. And then we looked at like the journalists that cover each city or what state they're in. They love that stuff because it feels very almost like rivalry. They beat another region, they beat another state, or things like that.
Interesting. But I want to go back to the data again.
Yeah,
we don't want
sure.
a PR show. Want to go back to the data whilst we've got you, and while you're willing to give out this data. So, guys, ask your questions. But something that Ryan Durrani actually said to me a couple of weeks ago was, is it inevitable that a website will fall off a cliff at some point? So Ryan's came from a agency background and, very white hat, and he's now getting into affiliates and all that kind of stuff. But he has this kind of thing in his head where you obviously seen people doing affiliate and seeing these updates and people's websites tank. Is that inevitable? And have you looked at anything like that within the data? Has websites, fell off a cliff? And does that happen like after 2, 3, 4 years, even if you're doing it properly?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and I think like the scientific term for it is almost survivor bias. Like this data looks at all the websites that have survived, right? There's no failed websites in here because if they were, if they'd failed, we wouldn't have been able to find them in the data. So there's definitely an element of survivor bias in this data. The hard part is actually understanding what that is. Is it 1 in 10 websites never made it to this list because they never got big enough? Or is it 1 in 100? Or is it 1 in 3? Like, we'll never know that essentially right now, but we can start to look at answering that going forward. So every 6 months or every 12 months, we can come back to this list and we can look at, of the sites that were getting traffic before, how many of them are still getting traffic? Is it 90%? Is it 20%? What does that look like? Have 80% of these websites lost traffic over the last 12 months? And how bad has that decline been? What's the average decline, or what's the average increase? So we can hopefully answer that question in the future. In terms of is it inevitable? I think it's how you structure the website or how you approach the website from the beginning. And this is another problem we have in the space, I think, is lots of people will come into this space to build a website as just a money-making thing, and they won't treat it as a proper business, and they definitely won't treat it as a brand, essentially. And I think that's the thing that's changing. Google is penalizing people that are trying to do shortcuts. Google is penalizing people that are doing things which they might get away with now, but might not in the future. But I do think if you build websites that you build as a real business, as a brand, you branch out. So you've got social media channels, and you branch out and you've got a YouTube channel, and you've got other areas of the business which maybe don't just rely on Google, for example. I think that's a good way to solidify. Another good way to try and insulate from that is, again, I know we literally just talked about digital PR, but getting a backlink profile that your competitors can't compete with, for example. If you do PR for a couple of years, like, it's going to be super competitive for a competitor to come in. But no, I don't think it's inevitable. I think lots of sites do fall off that cliff because they potentially don't keep up with the times, or they've written crappy content potentially that has now been picked up by Google, or they were doing product reviews, Amazon product reviews that were literally just rehashing Amazon product descriptions or even scraping product descriptions. I think there's a ton of sites in the last 2 years that have been caught up in all that mess. And unfortunately, sometimes a good site that doesn't do that gets caught up in updates because it's the nature of the algorithm. But I think if you're doing everything right and you're building it with longevity in mind, and you're building a brand around yourself, I think there is room there and scope there to keep sites for long term. I would bet sites in that top 2 brackets there, which have got 300,000 to 600,000 visits per month. There's loads of those which have been around for more than a couple of years, I would imagine.
Interesting. I'm just curious. I mean, I am the same belief as yourself. Try and treat it like a real business. When we look at websites that have been slapped, like you say, it's crappy content, no persona, Commercial content, only content, all that kind of stuff. I've never seen a good website that is treated like a real business being slapped ever in my life.
Usually it's short term. Like I've seen a couple, in all honesty, and it's short term. They get hit in an update and they'll come back in the next update. And having conviction to carry on with the strategy then is really hard because you've got to say, well, I'm doing everything right. I think Google's got this one wrong, carry on. But you've just got to have faith then that you are doing everything right, that you are treating it like a real business, the branding is right, that you're doing these other additional activities, and it should all work out in the wash, essentially.
And Ryan says he's worked in your money, your life industries for too long. Is probably half the answers in what you just said there, Ryan. So that's a bitch of a niche, but pick some fucking blog or a travel blog. You make
travel blog. Just low DR, low number of pages, a couple of 100,000 visits a month, easy.
Exactly. And travel, doing all those hotel specific stuff, there's loads of long tail opportunities, or hotel specific, location specific. There's enough meat on there to get to the 1,700 pages quite easily, if your budget allows. But
I love a destination or a travel aspect to any website. Almost any website you could think of will have the opportunity to expand by location. Even things like, you've got a website about surfing. And most people instantly think about surfing. They think about product. They think about how to surf, how to clean your board. But there's a ton of travel stuff in there. You've got best surf camps in different locations. You've got best surf schools. You've got best places at different times of the year. You've got all that is just travel location based. It could be 20 best places to surf in April, 20 best places to surf in May, the listicle stuff. And they're good for display ads, but you can also add on like an affiliate there because people are looking for that. They're going to travel there, and you can have a section on where to stay and how to get there, and make it helpful. You could talk about if they need visas or do they need injections, do they need anything to get there? But essentially, make it helpful, but also you can include where they can stay. Do they need to rent a car when they get there? There's probably affiliate programs for that as well. And almost, if you think about it hard enough, almost every niche usually has an element where you can look at location and you can expand quickly by either just, by state, by city, by time of the year, place by time of the year. That's one of my favorite methods for expanding keyword research, is finding those things.
Yeah. So there's a tip for you, Ryan. If you want to go and do it, he likes his traveling anyway. So, not a bad industry to get into. But what else, Adam? Because we've got 8 minutes left. Yeah. Guys, if you've got questions you want to grill Adam on, then let us know in the chat. But what else can you tell us from this data that could be useful for the users out there?
Yeah, the only other thing which I think is interesting here is this M column, this average traffic per post. And this is basically the traffic divided by the number of pieces of content they have. And I think this tells an interesting story from Google's perspective as well. You can see that the higher up the kind of banding, on average, the more traffic each piece of content gets. And I think this is just a testament to say that it's really hard to start off with, but the bigger your site gets, the more authoritative it gets, the more expertise, authority, and trust you build, the more Google trusts you with traffic. And at that point, then it gets exponentially easier the bigger the site is. So people that are thinking, oh my God, this looks really unachievable or unrealistic. How am I ever going to start? How am I ever going to get to 400 pieces of content? Know that it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Like, you don't have to do that in the next 2 months. Like, you can outsource some of it. You can write it yourself. You can do whatever you need to get to that point. But once you get there, the next rung is easier exponentially because Google rewards you with more traffic per post. So your efforts for creating the next piece of content are going to be rewarded more. And you get to the next rung and you think, oh, every time I create a piece of content now, on average, I'm not going to get 86 visitors. I'm now going to get 152 visitors. And you can almost use this as a motivational tool, I think. That's the way I look at it anyway, because it is really hard, especially for people starting to think, oh, that looks daunting, like really daunting. I'm doing all this effort for nothing. I created hundreds of pieces of content. Google's only given me a couple of 50 visitors per post. What's going on here? But I thought that was interesting to put in there, just to answer that question of it does get easier.
It's one thing that I can take away from just looking at this briefly is, and it's nothing new, but we can see that more content, more links equals more money. If you this,
let me show you that. I'll show you it on the graph. I forgot to show you this. So this is essentially links versus monthly visitors. So you've got average DR along the bottom and then visitors along the top. I mean, I haven't put a trend line in there because it's quite clear that sites that have more links or a better link profile get more visitors. There's anomalies in here where sites with lower DRs getting lots of traffic, but it's more clustered towards the higher end, essentially. There's more in this million visitors or 750 to 1 million visitors in here than there are, well, there's none down here, essentially. So I think that's like the visual representation of what you were looking at. And then same down here, number of pages versus monthly visitors. The more content you have, the more visitors you're going to get. And again, there's more in the 750 to 1 million range here than there is in here. There's anomalies here because there's always anomalies in the data, but there's way more here than there is here. And these are people with 1,000+ pieces of content. These are people with 10 to 100. So this is probably the visual representation of what you were just going to say.
Yeah, no, I think obviously looking at that chart or even looking at this, it's quite safe to say that it's the main thing when it comes to SEO and niche websites is content and links are still the two biggest things that you have to be doing. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of stuff in between, but it's all about getting your gloves off and start typing, doing more. Don't be lazy like me, and stuff like that is really, really important if you want to do it. And I look at Twitter, probably similar to you. There's so many people out there with niche websites absolutely crushing it. They're not claiming to be SEO experts at all. But there's people out there doing 10, 15, 20K a month just by sheer grind is all it is, which is amazing to see.
There was an Ezoic meetup recently where they invited the top publishers along, and these are people making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month from their websites, and the majority of them there were people that had just been grinding for a long time. Lots of them, they'd started, it wasn't even an SEO thing. They just started as a passion project or a niche, they loved cooking and they started a blog about cooking and they'd written thousands of pieces of content about cooking. Not because they were thinking, I want to make money and I want to game Google and I want traffic or anything like that. It was just a passion project. And I think it was telling to see that the people that were making those kinds of money, or lots of them, were people that had been doing this for years and years and years and then grinded out, hundreds, thousands, multiple thousands of pieces of content. And they loved it because it's their passion, but that's where they ended up. They ended up at the higher end of that data scale there.
It's madness, absolute madness. but yeah, hats off to them, people who can do that. But we are nearly out of time. Adam, any other last minute secrets you've not shown us, not let out the bag yet? Or what can we expect? Obviously, you've got the data now, so if you've not got any secrets, what can we expect going forward with data? I'm assuming you're still continuing to analyze and tweak and dig into this. So what else are you looking for?
Yeah, so there's going to be a couple of things off the back of this now. One is we are having a new website created at the moment. We're looking at how we can use this data in a nice way on the web, like an intuitive way on the website. So you can come there and you can say, I want a website that makes $1,000 a month, and then maybe you can pick your niche, and then from there it spits out what you need. So rather than having to use a spreadsheet to go through and filter, you can do that on the website. And like I say, this is version 1. It's not quite finished because we haven't got all the niches in there, but version 2, we've got the data there, I think, to build this up to about 10,000 websites. So double the amount of sites gives us, the more sites you have, the more accurate that average is. And also we want to add in things, like I said, do these sites have YouTube channels? Do they have social media channels? Do they have good about us pages? Do they have a physical address and a physical landline, or do they just have a contact us form? So we can start to build up this profile of them all, and then every either 6 or 12 months, we'll come back and we'll look at the sites in there and say, well, what's happened to them? Has their traffic gone down? Is a niche getting bigger? Is a niche growing? Do the sites in our database have more traffic now in the food space? And then we can start to say, well, one, try and answer that survivor bias question, like how many of them have failed? There's a percentage which might fail. Like, what does that percentage look like? But of the ones which are doing really well, what are they doing different? Of the ones which surged in Google updates, what do they do really well? And of the ones that fell off a cliff, what do they do really bad? And we can start to use that to, I guess, just inform our SEO strategy going forward. SEO this year is not the same as last year, and it's not the same as the year before. And this is a good tool for us to learn on, I think, and learn from going forward. So that's essentially what our plans are with the data. We'll, like I said, we'll share the data on the new website. We won't share the URLs because we think that gives us a real edge when we looked at narrowing down by niche and things like that. We won't share the actual URLs, but you'll be able to have access to the high level data essentially. Yeah,
that'd be interesting to see, like you say, all the YouTube, how many of YouTube channels, how many are doing this whole thing. So I think it'd be very interesting, for sure. But
I mean, the easy way is just come to us and we'll do it for you. That's the other way, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's certainly very much up my street. The guy, but so yeah, guys, you can check out the guys below. The link is there. You can email them, harass them, phone them, just whatever, to get their attention if you want to use any of their services. So use that link below, go check them out. But we are sadly out of time, Adam. So thank you again for some decent information, and obviously we look forward to seeing the data going forward as well, digging deeper into it. So hopefully that comes over the next couple of months. And as I say, thank you again for coming on. Do check out Niche Website Builders, guys. And and
if you're a loose end now, or next week on Thursday, we're doing a Christmas stream, a live stream. So people are going to be popping in, probably going to have a beer or two, maybe wear some Christmas hats. So if you are around, I think it's Craig's coming. I think it's 3 p.m. next Thursday over on our channel. Craig's going to be pissed probably. He's going to have a Santa costume on. He's going to be doing dances.
I don't know about that, but
the videos, Craig, I know all about it. I know what's going on.
But I will share that information as well. If anyone, I take it everyone's allowed to come and watch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'll share that as well closer to the time, guys. But on that note, please do, as I say, give us a like, subscribe, and reach out to the guys. The link is below. But thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, everyone, for asking questions. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
No worries.